What's up guys, welcome to my Balance Druid tips and tricks for Heroic Tomb of Sargeras. Now, this is just going over things like setups, trinkets, legendaries, mechanics that you can kind of juke or kind of deal with, as well as things like other things along those lines, little cheeses you might be able to do. This is not a rotational guide, so for that you can check out my 7.3 guide in the description below. Now, I'm full single target as you saw the talent setup. So I have the wrists and Impeccable Phalluses, the ring, so I try to recommend 4 single target as well as 2-piece from Nighthold and 4-piece from Tomb of Sargeras. And at the start you're just going to pop all your stuff, so Potion of Deadly Grace since it's single target, and then put on your dots, do your opener, and go ham. Now, as far as the trinket setup, anything single target like Owl is really good, maybe like a Mastery Stat Stick, anything that's really good for single is going to be good here. Now, big thing to note as a caster, this will come up a few times throughout the video, is that you want to minimize your downtime. So if you can, if you know mechanics are coming, things like Shattering Star, Infernal Burning, Spikes coming up soon, you might want to pull your Astral Power so that you have some Star Surges to cast while on the move, so you're not losing DPS or as much DPS. So you're always keeping higher uptime. So here, and the Spikes came out, for example, or they should come out after this. So I should pull up power, actually use it here, but I should pull up enough, and then I could move Star Surge, and then keep DPSing and not really lose too much time. Other than that, it's really simple mechanically. You just keep an eye on the lava, the spikes, try to move in, so kind of inch between casts, so like cast maybe an instant when you have to refresh your dot, like move in a little bit so that you can bait the spikes in, stuff like that. Now I am playing with Wild Charge, I was just messing around with it at the time. Displacer Beast is really good though to get you far distances, and it's probably a more generically recommended talent. So I would recommend that as well, so that you can just get used to planning your movement. So planning your movement's your big thing. And as far as using the trinket, the owl, if you do have that, you'll notice I did use it at the start. This is mostly because I'm a troll, so I get the 3-minute cooldown on my troll racial, which gives me 15% haste for 10 seconds, which kind of offsets getting the extra haste from your incarnation. So if you're not a troll, then you probably should delay it a bit. I also like the lineup here. You notice I'm already several seconds into my incon when I use it the second time around, but again, that's kind of less of an issue, so feel free to delay that at the start if you like. And other than that, it's a very simple single target fight, so try not to overlap your star falls. As you see here, I get 2 procs, but I'll wait. And I won't Star Surge either if I can help it. I'll just build up Astral Power until the other Starfall's almost done or completely done, so I don't waste the Stellar Empowerment, just kind of lengthening that Stellar Empowerment debuff as much as possible. Now for Demonic Inquisition, you can mess around with different setups. I would recommend probably Lady and the Child and the wrists for AoE, but between Soul, the Forest, and Incon, it's kind of up to you. Most people will use, for high parses, will use Soul if they're able to cleave a lot. And then of course you have Stellar Drift either way, definitely have that, and probably Shooting Stars. So at the start I use Prolonged Power because I like to cleave both, as you can see, so dot them both up. With Lady and the Child it's very easy to, because any dots you do will basically hit both as long as they're close enough, and then just basically Starfall to fill. And you just do lots and lots of damage. Now, they will split them up eventually, but it kind of depends. Some raids will keep them closer, so the closer you can keep them, the more you'll do. But with Stellar Drift, as you can see, it's quite a large area that you can Starfall, so you can do lots of damage. Now, how much you cleave during Fellsquall or Bone Soul kind of depends again on how comfortable you are with your Torment levels. So, as long as you just put Starfall down, for example, then it's not so bad, but you can also just wait and make sure you have dots on, fresh dots on whoever's about to go off. So for example, when Atrigan goes into Bonesaw, I should make sure I refresh the dots. I don't believe I do, but I should, because the dot ticks don't give you Torment, but applying them does. So if you do it beforehand, then you get the full damage benefit of those without the extra Torment. Then when they fire apart, you can just Star Surge as your filler, and again, as with on Goroth, just make sure that you're minimizing movements outside of what's necessary, so that you can keep the highest uptime possible. So that means when you see things like these circles coming, the suffocating dark, maybe start pulling up some Astral Power, getting ready to move and Star Surge at the same time. Same thing with Echoing Anguish, potentially, because you may be a target and you may have to move out. And again, I probably recommend Displacer Beast. One nice thing about Displacer Beast with Quills is as soon as it goes off, you couldn't displace it and dodge it completely, which is really, really useful. If you're worried about fall damage, which I don't think is too much of a concern here, you can flap on the way down, of course, but really not too much of an issue generally. So as you can see, we're kind of split here, pretty far apart, so we don't get to cleave as much. They're kind of, I think they were practicing for Mythic, so they're practicing on making sure that our mages aren't, you know, splitting their ice lances and stuff like that. But that's pretty much the concept of this fight. If you need to go in, just, I would recommend hitting the boss. Well, first of all, hit the ad as much as you can. I like to just put Starfall down. The damage you do in there is not that relevant, and Starfall allows you to keep moving and casting with Stellar Drift, which allows you to keep picking up the balls as you do your DPS to that ad, and then it lets you get out faster. So again, keep your dots on. I'm being a little sloppy again about making sure that we keep dots up before they go into things like Fell Squall, so that's something you definitely look to do, and it really helps out. So here I just Starfall on the inside, I get a bunch of balls, pop out, easy, and go back and hit the bosses. Now they're pretty close, and I don't really care about Torment because I know they're almost dead, and he's about to end anyway, so let's drop some Starfall, try to cleave a bunch. And that's kind of the concept of this fight, so cleave as much as you can between the two. Keep dots up and make sure you refresh the dots before they go into their spinny crap, whether Fell Squall or Bonesaw, and just plan your movement as best you can with the different mechanics so you don't have to move when you need to, or you don't lose DPS when you have to move. Now in Harjatan you can kind of change what you want to do. Again, I'm using Ring because I was playing around with it, but it's probably best to do Lady in the Child and Owner's Intuition. And then whether you go Incarnation or Soul of the Force is kind of up to you. If the ads melt really fast, you should probably just go Incarn and do the most single target you can. Unfortunately, you won't parse as high, of course, as you could, but if they just melt too fast, there's no reason to lose single target. Now, if you do take Onus and you have Soul of the Force as well, and of course Stellar Drift and Shooting Stars, then you want to make sure you save your cooldown for when these ads come out at the beginning, because you want to make sure you're doing as much AoE as possible. Try to pull up, and it's something I actually didn't do in this video, but make sure you pull up your Astral Power before the ad phases. That's Commanding Roar on DBM timers, I don't know, probably the same on Bigwigs, and just drop all the Starfalls. Just poop them out as they're coming in, start dotting them up then, and you'll get the most value out of your Astral Power and your Starfall. Other than that, stand where you're supposed to, move out if you need to with Aqueous Burst. Remember, you can just walk out with it, or you can use something like Displace a Beast or Wild Charge to get out. And again, so every time the ads come up, you should be pulling Astral Power up, dropping at least 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 if you have that much, and just, you know, dropping those and then dotting them up as you can. Now, as far as setups go for gear, just make sure you have your 4-piece from tier 20, your Tomb of Sargeras 4-piece. You don't need the tier 19s for any AoE fights. It's really just for single target. And then it's just that. So this fight over and over is very, very simple. Just again, make sure you're pulling up Astral Power and really get a gauge on kind of how your raid is, how strong the AoE is. In this raid, as you noticed, they kind of melts. So I probably should have gone more single target focused and just pulled up a little bit better, of course, on Astral Power. At the start, you could probably get away with using a Prolonged Power since the ads do spawn, I'd say maybe around 15 seconds-ish into the fight. So you get the full length of your Prolonged Power on those ads. Just make sure you're doing that when possible. And then, of course, the next time you pot, I would again wait for ads and your cooldown, of course, if it does come up. In this case, I don't believe the boss lasts long enough for it. But, you know, just use that Prolonged Power before the ads come out. And you can use it a little bit early too, because it does last a full minute. That's pretty much it for Harjatan. Very simple. If you've got AoE potential, take advantage of the AoE. And if you don't, then, you know, then you'll just have to go single target and do the best you can. And I wouldn't worry too much about fixates, at least. So being fixated by the gladiators, not a huge deal. They don't hurt that much. But if your healers, of course, want you to, you'll have to move out with that. Forces of the Moons, mostly single targets. You can see my talent set up here because I do have the legendary wrists, Onus, Intuition, and Impeccable Felt Essence, so IFE. Now, as far as gear goes and trinkets and so on, use your single target setup. So if you have the 2-piece from Nighthall, that's really good, along with the 4-piece from Tomb of Sargeras. And of course, things like Spectral Owl will be really good here as well. Now, big things to note here. One, when you have to move mechanics out, you can't always plan for all of these, like Twilight Volley, Twilight Glaive, stuff like that it's just RNG a little bit. You can try to pull a little, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you do get low and you need a defensive, make sure you do drop Bear Form if you have to. Boxing on Heroic is generally good enough though. The big thing to note on this fight, the 70% and 40% the bosses switch out and there's some dead time in between. So it's very important you don't use things like your trinket or your cooldown as they transition, because you'll have some dead time, which is really, really bad. So just keep an eye on that timer and make sure that health percentage, and just make sure you're doing what you can. Now, of course, as always, make sure you're watching your movement, your dead time as you move, and try to pull up astral power during, you know, periods that you have to move, for like Moonburn, for example, or Glaive Storm, Incorporeal Shot, stuff like that. And just make sure that you are moving appropriately and try to not have dead time during that. So one way is to pull up astral power, another is to wait to refresh your dots until those happen, as long as they're not going to fall off for a while. And when Moon Talon comes up, as you can see, just try to cleave it down. Definitely have dots on both of them, Starfall when you can, just to take advantage of that 2 target DPS. Now you notice the moon goes and you'll know exactly when mechanics are coming, so be aware of that. So here I should really probably pull up some astral power. In this case I'm moving to the edge away from where the Glaive Storm is going to go, because I can see the cat lady as she jumps. I just want to make sure I'm not getting hit by Glaive Storm, because that'd be pretty bad. Now here, I choose to pop my Incarnation and my second part, and I guess, of course, I'm using Deadly Grace here, but I could probably have waited, could easily argue to have waited, as she was maybe about 7 to 8% away from transitioning. I make a really big mistake here. Out of habit, I pop my trinket right away, and the boss, of course, immediately transitions. So just really be aware of that, and I should have just saved it just a couple seconds. Could have used it on this boss instead. But other than that, it's just a single target fight. Again, if you have Lunar Beacon, if you have Twilight Glaive and you're scared, don't be afraid to go Bear Form, especially in Guardian Affinity, because you can Frenzied Regen yourself and heal yourself for a decent chunk when you take a bunch of damage. Plus you get extra health. So that's pretty much it for this fight. It's very simple. Just, again, lots of potential movement, so make sure you're prepared for that. And as you get more familiar with the fight, you'll be able to kind of be more comfortable with pulling up, when to pull up astral power, when to dodge. Using things like Displacer Boost can be nice to dodge glaives if they're coming right at your face. You may be able to just blink through them. It can be really nice. And one little trick for ranged in general, with the Glaive Storm, so this is only with the big glaive that splits, if you're flush up against the wall, you can actually, you'll never get hit by the small ones, so the 9 split. And also there's a spot on the left side of the entrance, so if you walk in on the left side of that pillar there, you can kind of see, now I'm facing away from it. If you put your back up to there, none of the glaives will hit you, but that's just something you can work with on your guild, or just personally, so you can avoid it altogether. And that'll allow you to, of course, during phase 2 and 3, with the Glaive Storm, just continue to keep casting, as long as you don't put any crap there, of course, like if you get Volley or if you get Beacon on you in phase 3, it could be kind of awkward. For Mistress, you basically go in AoE unless the ads are melting really fast, or you need to change the timing that you kill them for tornadoes in phase 1 and 3. So Lady and the Child for legendaries for sure, and then probably Onus, Intuition, the wrists, or Soul of the Arc Druid. I think Onus is generally better though, but I was using Soul just to mess around in this one. So at the start, if you have Incon, pop it right away, that's fine. If you don't, if you're using Soul, then I probably wait till the ads come out, and then just dodge this first jellyfish. No one needs to get hit by it, so there's no reason to. Now, as soon as she goes out, make sure you pull up some astral power, something I don't do perfectly here, but try to pull up astral power and drop a bunch of starfalls as soon as the ads spawn, and then dot them up. So Sunfire to hit all of them, because they generally spawn pretty close, and then Moonfire with Lady and the Child, just 2 should do it. Hit one of them, like target one of them, and then you can target the boss or just any of them to get the last one. Now as the Murlocs start dropping, you can start dotting those up to and AoE those. You can interrupt them, you can move them, you can stun them, do all sorts of fun stuff. So here, drop Starfall, get these Abyss Stalkers going, and dot them up. And then, of course, if you have Murlocs, do make sure you get hit. Unless your healers are fine healing it. On Heroic, it's not too bad, so you know, ask your healers if it's okay if you just chill so you don't get stunned, or you know, have a pocket healer dispel you in case you do need to get stunned to get rid of that Murloc. Now make sure, of course, get in and doing all the mechanics. Try to avoid being near the Abyss Stalkers when they die. Of course, they drop that Merc. That makes you miss a lot of the time. As a range, you generally don't have to get in too close, so just make sure you're not standing in that in phases 1 and 3, and even 2, but they're kind of less relevant there. So in phase 2, things to plan movement for include things like the Crashing Wave, when you have to move, and the Maw, where the Devouring Maw, where the shark tries to eat you. And as a druid, you do have a lot of tools to kind of help put in the ink, so make sure you do that if you need to. Displace the Beast is really good, and also helps you dodge tornadoes if you need to. And You can also have dash in cat form and stuff like that. Now, dead globals aren't too much of an issue here because generally you'll be spending most of your astral power on Starfall, which with Stellar Drift allows you to cast while moving, so it is kind of nice on this fight. You can Star Search sometimes, but most of the time there will be ads coming, so I actually recommend you don't, unless you're melting the ads really fast, in which case you'd probably be doing single target more anyway. So as you can see, ads spawn. As soon as I decided to Star Search, I kind of regretted it. Again, pull astral power, watch your timers as best you can. The better you know the fight, the more you can do. Try to avoid getting ink pulls until the shot comes out. And during Crashing Wave, when it's coming out, you might want to delay your Starfall just for a bit to see where it is. So you don't drop one and then immediately everything moves out of it. It's something else you can kind of consider during Phase 2. And even Phase 3 as well, because Crashing Wave is there. Now, generally, most guilds, especially if you're progressing on it, will Lust or Heroism in Phase 3. So make sure you have a pot ready for that. And if you can, hopefully your lineup will be better than mine was here. We're kind of pushing a little hard for my Incarn to line up perfectly. But if it does, if you're a few seconds off from 40%, which is Phase 3, and Heroism's coming, then you can save your Incarnation for that. So, kind of up to you, or your Celestial alignment if you've taken Soul of the Forest. So just be aware of that. And kind of plan around that. Same thing as Sisters, you don't want to use it by accident. Other than that, it's an AoE setup, which I didn't really mention at the start. I kind of mentioned, but gear-wise, you just need a 4-piece from Tomb of Sargeras. Trinkets, probably not Owl, doesn't scale with AoE. They will do a lot of good boss damage, of course. So something like anything that buffs, that's good. Mastery stat sticks, Whispers in the Dark. Even Terror from Below is probably okay, sometimes. Things like that. So, that's pretty much this fight. As you see, we're okay here with the tornadoes a bit. Now, I see that I'm a little far. So I actually could take a hit here. If I had Displaced Abuse, I could have just blinked through it. There was a hole, but I was too far. I didn't notice it. So that's something to consider. Now, if you do happen to get hit and you're really low, remember that Bear Form is a very viable option to keep you alive, as well as any healing you have. So Bear Form here, Frenzied Regen, get healed up. And it can just save you in a pinch if you do kind of screw up sometimes with things like Hydra, or if you notice not enough people are in your Hydra, or with tornadoes, things like that. You can help yourself because it's all physical damage. And a Bear Form, along with the extra health pool and Frenzied Regen in Guardian Affinity, does increase your armor. So really good to use that defensively if you need to. Now for Desolate Host is mostly an AoE fight, so generally you'll want to go AoE talents. So Soul of the Forest if you don't have Soul of the Arc Druid, and definitely go Lady and the Child, and probably go Onus Intuition rather than Soul if you can. So at the start in Spirit Realm, which is where I am starting here, try to get your Starfall out ASAP. So as soon as you can, pop it out and get some dots going. After that, they die instantly, so of course didn't get as much AoE as possible. Now in Corporeal Realm, same thing. The soul residues aren't there, so they won't die quite as fast. The ads rather. And hopefully your team is good at breaking Shattering Screams. For whatever reason, this day, they didn't break them, so Corporeal Realm got kind of shit on, unfortunately. Feels bad for them. But, of course, you do the same thing. AoE them down. As soon as Bone Cage comes up, you can single target. And as soon as Bone Cage is broken, keep AoEing, destroy them, and then single target on the boss. Now all the mechanics you do want to do, of course, as a druid, you have things. Displaced Beast is really nice for Soulbind, getting to the right place. Tormented Cries, you can get in and actually get the stuff behind the boss during that, and things like that. And actually eventually go to the Corporeal Realm because I'm a Dirty Powder. And here, Wailing Souls, I decide, I'm like, do we want to stay? Now some groups, you may be asked to stay down in Wailing Souls, so in Spirit Realm during Wailing Souls, and some you may be asked to leave. Now in this case I pop out, start dotting everything up, and then grab some Astral Power, and just kind of drop some AoE, because some of the new ads are losing Bone Shield, or don't have Bone Shield, and some of the old ads were, dropping it off finally just from duration, and potentially Screams. Now if you do go to Corporeal Realm, for whatever reason, or you go to Spirit Realm, if you get Speared, for example, 1, pop a cooldown, and 2, make sure you go back to the right side, the correct side rather. So if, whatever realm, wherever Spirit Realm is, generally on the left, you want to go there if you get punted in there, and if you leave the Spirit Realm, then make sure that you go to the right side for Corporeal Realm, which is generally where it is, but again, depends on your raid. In this case, out of habit and just not wanting to have to deal with movement, I'm just dropping Starfall. It's fairly close damage, one single target anyway, and then I go back into Spirit Realm after, So the Wailing Souls ends, and just do a bunch of AoE down here. Now again, just try to kill soul residues as fast as possible. They should be your top priority, but they do tend to die pretty fast. So you have something else that hits faster with big AoE, like Unholy DKs, for example, or things like that can just really blow them up. Then you don't have to focus too much on them. Just drop Starfall and maybe like get some Moonfires on them. Now here we end up going into phase 2. Now do note that at 35% they stop spawning ads, so if you're worried about Bone Cage armor but you've already passed 35%, you're not going to get any more ads, so don't bother waiting too much. Now here you do want to kill the old boss and of course the ads if you can, so do AoE as much as you can, and while the old boss is still active, so Soul Queen in Spirit Realm and Engine of Souls in Corporeal Realm, make sure that you're doing 2-target cleave. So dot up the Desolate Host and the old boss, and do make sure you get in, of course, to the circle. It's really important that you do, but you can focus on, you know, the old boss and then just cleave off, but make sure you dot both. Get your, you know, your second pot here. Generally it'll be Bloodlusting in both top and bottoms. In this case you could prolong if you want to focus on the cleave, which is probably pretty fair, or if you just want to focus on single target, you can of course use Deadly Grace instead. And then you just cleave them down, and then as soon as they die you deal with the Desolate Host and you just single target it. Very, very simple. One thing I haven't really mentioned for trinkets, again AoE and setup, so you just want your 4-piece from Tomb of Sargeras, you don't need the 2-piece from Nighthold. And trinket wise, just not the owl basically, because it's single target and it doesn't scale. So other things, Mastery Statsticks, Tear from below, you know, Whispers in the Dark, stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. So as soon as the boss dies, it's just pure single target. Very simple movement, and just kind of finish it up. So that's pretty much it for Desolate Host. Again, some of the AoE situations will depend on your group. If they have super high AoE, you might not get the chance to do your maximum AoE, so do what you can and get a feel for your group. If they're just melting it too fast, you could just focus on, you know, doing single target to the boss, if that suits you better. Moving on to Maidens, pure single target, so I went pure single target setup. That's 2-piece, 4-piece, so 2-piece Nighthold, 4-piece Tomb. I went the Earnest Intuition Wrist Legendary, and also the Impeccable Fell Essence. And then at the start here, just pop your stuff, go, you know, pre-pod Deadly Grace, of course. Now I actually choose to save my cooldown because we don't Bloodlust or Heroism until the end of the first phase, the first ball phase. Now if your group lusts at the start, go ahead and pop your cooldowns, it's fine. But generally make sure that you get the full value of your trinket and cooldown. So if you Bloodlust at the start, you pop your cooldowns then don't use it the second time, wait till you get to the next time she does the second ball phase. At the end of that with the buffs, then use your cooldown then, just to make sure you're not getting clipped. Now, of course, I'll do all the mechanics, move out of stuff. One cool thing you can do, of course, if you have Displace a Beast, you can displace it if you have to go into the hole. Now, one thing I'm doing here, it's a little dangerous, but basically I didn't want to compete on my side with the melee, so I went to the other side. Just make sure you don't touch anyone, don't be near them at all. I'm grabbing the balls on this side. But it's something you can do if you're finding yourself unable to get there. But you do have Displace a Beast, you have Dash, you have a lot of ways to get there, so don't be afraid to. So here we pop Heroism, so I second pot here, Deadly Grace. And again, as a troll, I also use the Owl right away, but of course you can save it if you're not for about 10 seconds into your Incarnate Celestial Alignment. Now, I wait till Infusion happens so I can safely move through. I got lucky with a proc. You could even fish for a proc if you want to and save it, even though it's not necessarily ideal, just so you can keep casting as you move to whatever side you need to. Again, as single target, it's pretty important that you do plan your movement. So as you see, this, for example, the hammer coming out, maybe you fish for a proc for your wrists so you can have Starfall during that so you can move away. Maybe you save up AP so you have a couple globals worth of good movement where you can DPS with Star Surge still, even though you have to move. Now again, we get Infusion here, so make sure you check your side. And then it's just basically that. Now if you don't have Displace a Beast or it's not available when you have to jump into the middle, if you get a bomb for example, then don't be afraid to use Flap on the way down. It will lower your DPS of course because you could just dot or something, or if you have enough for Star Surge you could Star Surge, but it will prevent the fall damage, which is pretty nice. Just do not flap on the way like into the hole, just wait till you actually get knocked out of it. And cancel it as soon as you can, just probably to reset your fall damage, but hopefully you won't have to deal with that. Now again, we go to blowback here, and again, generally you should go with your group, stick with them, let them do the balls, let them grab the stuff for you. But I was being kind of greedy here, so I went to the other side. But you have to be very careful. If you do this, don't fuck your group. Don't walk by one of them, because right here, someone gets really close to me, and I'm actually surprised we didn't proc there looking at that now. Really surprised I didn't proc. So just be very careful. But this will allow you to grab all the balls, because no one on this side is going to want these fucking balls, right? Because it's the wrong color. So it's kind of a nice way, and I think it's a part of a mythic strat anyway. So you can mess around with that if it helps you out. That's pretty nice here. It's about a 2-minute intermission, if you will. So at the end of the ball phase, you do get your cooldowns back, which is really nice. If you are all constantly casting, and again, we wait for infusion, I get a lucky proc, and I use Starfall to move while casting while I move. And it's kind of the name of the game here, so just using what you need to. Now, one thing I want to note, you don't see it in this video because I was really never on green side, at least so far. I believe I get one at the end, but the green side hammers tend to be more dangerous because mass instability goes out right before. As you can see on their side, they have 2 people, including the tank and such. So there's less people on green side typically. So if you're taking that hammer on green side, that's probably a good time to use bark skin or to quickly switch to bear form just to make sure you don't die, get insta-jibbed. It's very bad if you do. So here I actually get the green side, and on light side, nothing tends to happen right before, so unless everyone's being an idiot, like, you should have everyone there. But green side can be a little touchy, so do be aware of that. And again, planning your movement for the swirl is very, very important. So that's pretty much this fight. Now, again, what I did with the blowback may not be what you want to do. If not, just take this place to beast, get there with the group as much as you can. And if it's just a free-for-all competition, I really would recommend trying to kind of master going to the other side safely, of course, so you don't cause explosions, and just grabbing the balls at the end that nobody wants because they're on the other side. Moving on to Fallen Avatars, basically pure single target. I've got Onus Intuition, so I'm using the Stellar Drift, 2-piece, 4-piece from Ninehold and Tomb of Sargeras, and of course Impeccable Fallacies. Now technically you could pad really, really strongly on the Maiden. I really recommend you don't, I really try not to. So dots are going to get on her eventually, possibly sometimes, but other than that, you just really want to make sure you're not padding on her if you can help it. So I am Blessing of the Ancients rather than shooting stars for that reason. Now, Unbound always happens at the start. If you need to, you can delay your movement, but it's probably pretty good if you just pull up Astral Power, so you have a couple globals, again, of Star Surge. Again, planning your movement, very important. Now, mechanics aren't always set on the timers in this fight, so you see the timers go off and then you're not quite sure what will come next. So just do your best to plan ahead as much as possible, and again, especially for Unbound Chaos. Now, if you're at range for Rupture Realities, just pop Barkskin, it'll be up for every single one. So just have that available, pop it early, it's 12 seconds, it lasts a long, long time. So just be prepared and use that every time so you don't have to move. Now here, see, I don't have any Astral Power, so I actually lose that quite a bit here. Whereas if you pull up in preparation, you could have a couple Star Surges for free, kind of while you're moving. Now of course, move into touch as soon as you can, and when you switch to Maiden, I actually go ahead and Starfall, so this is when I will start to cleave, is I want to do some boss damage and I want to break the Maiden, and you know, using Starfall at this point is actually pretty good for both. I'll switch back immediately, of course, once her shield is broken, and that's pretty much the name of phase 1. Do your best to dodge other people's blades or to move your blades to the correct place. Do your best to kind of prepare for Unbound Chaos, which is kind of not my focus during this fight, but it should have been. So it's something you can definitely do to improve your numbers and your uptime. And then just single target the boss. So it's very simple. Normally we'll Bloodlust at the start. Some people will wait till after the first Unbound, so pop your cooldown whenever you know that your group will lust. Well, if it's not at the start, like the very, very start, then save it for whenever it is, hopefully right after the first Unbound. There's really no reason to save it for like phase 2 or anything. So here I get blades, move out, and you can either blink out of it once it's done, or you can wild charge out or just waddle out. It's a little slow though, because it does slow you down. And as soon as your second cooldown's up, if you did lust at the start or close to, then just pop your second part here, so Deadly Grace and so on. Now here we get Maiden again and Unbound, so I kind of take some damage here, which is really unfortunate. I'm bare form because I took a bad path and people next to me also took a bad path. And then here again, just focusing Maiden but cleaving down the Fallen Avatar. Now one thing I did notice here is that my Moonfire did drop off. Make sure you have that active on the boss at all times if possible. Luckily I don't think I dropped the Circadian stacks from your 4th golden trait. And then here again, Rupture Realities. Barkskin, move out a little bit, of course, just again help your healers. So I pulled up a little bit of Astral Power there, and then get stacks of my 4-piece. Rolling, and this is pretty much how it's going to go until you get to phase 2. Now, generally, I really do recommend Displaced Beast. You notice I'm again playing Wild Charge, because I thought it was pretty funny. It looks funny, and it's kind of cute. But for distances like that, Displaced Beast is really nice to have. Now here, for Unbound, I should have just saved Star Surge, but, you know, just make sure that you're trying to prepare for movement, because there's a lot of downtime I just had right there. Other than that, try not to get out of range of the boss if you can, but follow your raid's instructions, of course, for how you want to move. So don't, like, move side to side. Generally, that'll fuck people pretty badly. Try to instead do things like going straight back, or moving like a tiny little box, like you did on, like, Gul'dan. Things like that. So here we're getting pretty close. Maiden has maybe one more break, potentially, if at all. And we'll just try to push the boss as far as possible. Now here we have Unbound. The best thing I can do is drop dots because I wasn't prepared. So really do try to do that. Now, I did pop a cooldown again because I think we're going to go through another Maiden phase. Now, if you're not sure, like, just listen to the calls or get used to your raid and when they push and when they decide to kind of stay up. I think they called for a kill on Maiden here. So I started putting Starfall down just to make sure it is cleaving her. Normally I will position my Starfall away from her just to make sure I'm not accidentally cleaving her, but I'm pretty sure they made a call here to kill her because he was about to push anyway. Now remember, the Fallen Avatar does push no matter what at 20%. So once he drops below that, he'll kill the Maiden regardless. So you might need to kill her at this point. Now just kind of watch your cooldowns. If they're not ready or they're coming up right when that's going to happen, then save them for phase 2 so you get full uptime on them. You can flap on the way down, avoid that fall damage. You don't have to flap the whole way down, just have to, you know, cut yourself off like I did there. Displaced Beast is really good here for dodging things. Again, flap to avoid the fall damage from soaking a mark is really nice in phase 2. And other than that, just dodge tornadoes. Pop a cooldown, probably Barkskin is really good, or Bear Form if you are going to help someone soak. If you have Wild Charge, you could like Bear Form and Wild Charge to the boss, again, to cut that damage down. Other than that, just single target him down. Move out when you need to whatever location is specified by, you know, the way, whatever way your tanks take the boss. And then just finish him up. So tornadoes are probably the biggest thing in this phase that'll kill you, along with Dark Marks. Again, Bear Form is really good, Barkskin's really good for that. And then you can either Wild Charge down if you have that with the bear, or of course you can go Cat Form just to reduce fall damage, or you can flap and boomkin form. Anything works. A lot of options. So for Kil'jaeden, we're looking at full single target setup. So it's Impeccable Fallacin's legendary. The legendary braces are its intuition, and this talent setup, as you can see, for the most part, and of course single target trinkets and the 2-piece, 4-piece from Tomb of Sargeras and Nighthold. Now at the beginning, just do your basic opener as he walks to his position. Get ready for your Armageddon soaks. So whether that's pulling up Astral Power or having your Blink or Wild Charge ready to get to where you need to go, just make sure you're ready for it, in case you have to soak. Now, what comes next is the add. So you want to fish for a proc if possible with your wrists if you have that, or pull up a bunch of Astral Power so that you can Starfall immediately, especially if you can get 2 Starfalls, that'd be pretty sexy as well. I was fishing for a proc there, probably should have saved it instead to be sure. Drop a Starfall, and in this case, I just Sunfire because I know those adds are going to melt. You can watch them just melt over here. They lasted maybe 6 seconds total. So, they're just, if they're melting like that, don't bother putting Moonfires on. If they aren't, if they're up for a decent amount of time, again, if you apply a Moonfire and they last for 6 seconds or more, it's probably worth it. So depends on your raid and your group. Kind of adjust as you need to. Now we skip Rupturing, it would have been in the middle here, so you just prepare for that knockback with, again, pulling Astral Power or otherwise. And you notice I do chase the boss here a little bit. That's not to do DPS to him, really. What it is I'm trying to but use Impeccable Fallacin's, the ring, to lower my Incarnation cooldown so it's ready by phase 2. Now we'll still soak, of course, don't wipe the group for the sake of trying to maximize your DPS. And use Wild Charge or Blink if you need to, as you saw right there, to avoid getting knocked off with Rupturing. Or of course you can just look at where it is and, you know, move closer to there, but in this case I was trying to max DPS a little bit. And here I see Armageddon, Soul Circuit, take the DPS slots, just go bear form. There's no reason, if you're not DPSing, there's no reason not to be in bear form to take these hits. And then I go back and I take a look at where the Rupturing Singularity was, and then I go back to the boss. One thing you really don't want to lose is the Circadian Invocation, that buff from having your dots on the boss, because you don't want to have to stack that up again. Now, wait till his debuff goes off before you cast any big spells. I didn't have Incarnation quite up here, unfortunately, but as soon as it's up, I use it and just kind of go along. This is Deadly Grace, of course. This and the pre-pot should be Deadly Grace, a single target. Although I suppose you could, if you need the AoE, use Prolonged at the start, or here as well. I don't really focus on the AoE in particular because I know they melt too damn fast, but if you do need to, again, Prolonged is a very viable option for that as well. After that, let's do the mechanics. I move out of focus because I think we were having our melee do it, and it was a little crowded, so I didn't want to splash people, which could get them killed instead of helping them. And then we got Armageddon coming up too. Now it's important to get used to the overlaps in mechanics for Kil'jaeden, so that you know when the movement's coming, when you have to pull Astral Power, you know when you have to prepare some sort of movement thing to get out and, handle these mechanics. So Bursting happens here, then Armageddon, and then we got a Tankard, and we want to cleave it down with Starfall, and of course, dotting up both. So make sure you keep your dots rolling on both targets, Kil'jaeden and the Tankard, and then just a Starfall. Now if you know it's going to die soon, like really soon, you have enough, go ahead and Star Surge. Don't waste it on the Starfall if you know it's not going to last very long. Focus Dread Flame comes out here with Rupturing. I took a look, Rupturing is behind me right now, so I back up a little so I'll kind of be in a good spot here. Not in front of Kil'jaeden, but not too far, so I can stay here and cast for a bit. And then get ready for the next lineup. Now this next lineup I handle probably a little poorly. What I would recommend is, you might get Bursting, and then you'll guaranteed get a Rupture in the middle. So you want to pull up a bunch of Astral Power if you can, or let your dots be close to expiring so you can use those as free globals. Make sure you get back in. So Bursting, you have plenty of time to drop the Bursting, get back in, and then get knocked again. You can use Wild Charge or Blink to stay in with Rupturing if you want to, but there's just a lot of dead global time. Now here, I would pop cooldown if we had to deal with the next lineups, and I'm not going to go over them, just know them if you need to, but I noticed we're going to push the boss, which is why I'm not popping my cooldowns. So in this case, as a druid, you can go cat form and track humanoids. It's something you should set up before the fight. I see where he is, I ping it on the map, I move over there ASAP, and go as quickly as possible, and then just AoE the ads down as they're up. Now if they're not close enough to be, to be Starfall, then go ahead and just single target them down, but generally your Stellar Drift makes your Starfall huge, so you can kind of hit everything. Once you've caught all of them, finish them up, make sure you stay somewhat close to Illidan so that you can get the buff when you need to. It's important because you can't get healed when it expires off of you, so it's important that you don't get yourself killed by being too far. So here we finish up the last side. Get to Kil'jaeden, make sure you pop something, probably Barkskin or Bear Form, when he finishes this cast, or if your healers have a cooldown, that's really nice as well. So I pop my cooldowns because they're up, go really hard on him as much as possible. I am assigned to the fireballs in this particular instance, but people are really bad about it, and I'm kind of bad about it too. Now one really important thing here is the obelisks. So you look at where the rift is won, because you want to know where you shouldn't be if you're not counting the ball, and where you should be if you are counting the ball. Obelisks, as soon as they spawn, take a look, find a safe spot. They just go in kind of the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, looking at where the boss spawned at the start. So make sure that you know where the safe spots are. Now there, someone took the ball and put it in the middle, so I got distracted and I got hit by an obelisk, which is very bad. Really try to avoid that as much as possible. And of course now I get sucked in the rift because I'm really just out of it at this point, so I bear form. If I get low, try to frenzy regen up. And then back on the boss. Now we get a ball again. So this time I tell people to kind of GTFO. I grab it and then someone's in my way, but I do drag it somewhat close to the rift. Now you don't have to get it in the rift, but you do want it to be close to it, on the edge possibly, and just away from the people in general. This way, as you can see, it gets sucked in and it's really nice that way. Other than that, you can sack for the focus if you need to, get out with boasting of course, and just try to plan your movement. As soon as the rift goes, you're basically always moving. So pull up Astral Power, and as soon as you start using Star Surges or you need to refresh your dots, move close to the boss, move away from the rift a little bit, just to make sure you don't have to move and not cast anything at all, or have a Starfall proc. So I get in here, of course, let it hit, get out, and then just do single target again. That's kind of the name of the game. Same thing, Obelisk will spawn after Tear Rift, so look at where the rift is, that's where I need to go. Take a look at obelisks. Take a look at find a safe spot, especially if you're not kiting the orb. One thing I do badly here is I don't really pay attention to the obelisks as I'm kiting the orb, which is of course a fatal mistake. But generally just try to get it in the right spot and find a safe spot preemptively, so you can again plan your movement. In this case I get hit by this obelisk because I'm totally just not paying attention. And then bear form, try to survive a bit. And finish up the boss like that. So that's pretty much it for Kil'jaeden. There's a lot of stuff to learn. Just get used to it. The more you know the fight, the better you'll do. And if you guys hopefully found this fun, feel free to leave the video with a like. Hopefully you found it helpful. And feel free to leave any comments or questions you have in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Cheers.